Samantha was in the kitchen when Daniel came in, his smile wider than usual. He leaned against the counter, his voice carrying an unusual excitement as he said, "We're having a pool party this weekend. Just us and a few close friends." His tone was light, casual, but there was something behind his eyes that made Samantha pause. He looked like a man hiding something yet too happy to keep it from spilling out. She laughed softly, trying to match his enthusiasm, but deep inside she wondered why he looked at her like that, like he was waiting for her reaction. The days leading up to the weekend felt different. Samantha noticed how Daniel was more careful with his words. How he made quick phone calls when he thought she wasn't listening. How he whispered into his phone late at night. Whenever she asked, he would brush it off with a grin and say, "Just making sure everything is ready." Everything. She didn't even know what everything meant. A pool party was usually simple drinks, food, laughter, but Daniel was treating it like something far more important. Samantha tried to focus on normal things, her work emails, the laundry, her morning jog, but her mind kept circling back to his strange excitement. Was this just another one of Daniel's attempts to surprise her? He had done it before, small gestures, little dinners, unexpected flowers. But lately, things between them hadn't been as smooth. He had been distant, distracted, and she had been carrying the weight of silence in their marriage. Could this pool party be his way of bridging the gap? Or was it something else? Friday evening arrived, and the air felt alive with summer warmth. Samantha watched from the window as Daniel set up the backyard. He strung lights across the fence, their soft glow flickering as the sun began to dip. The pool shimmered under the twilight, reflecting streaks of gold and orange. She couldn't deny it looked beautiful. But what unsettled her was the precision, the care Daniel was putting into everything. He wasn't just preparing for a few friends. He was preparing for something that mattered deeply. She dressed slowly, choosing a light summer dress, the kind Daniel always liked. As she brushed her hair, she caught her own reflection in the mirror and sighed. She remembered how they used to be, always laughing, always reaching for each other without hesitation. She missed that. She missed the version of Daniel who couldn't stand to be away from her for too long. Lately, he had felt like a stranger sitting across the dinner table. Maybe tonight, she thought. Maybe tonight would be different. When she stepped outside, Daniel looked up immediately. His eyes lingered on her, and for a second, the silence between them felt full of unspoken words. Then he smiled, reaching for her hand. "You look perfect," he said softly, and that was when her heart stumbled. Perfect. She hadn't felt perfect in a long time. And hearing it from him almost made her believe it again. The sound of a car pulling up broke the moment. Daniel's friends began arriving, Mark with his easy grin, Emily with her warm embrace, and Chris with his usual jokes that filled the air with laughter. Samantha welcomed them, hiding her unease behind smiles. They carried drinks, snacks, and the kind of energy that made the backyard feel alive. Yet even as everyone settled by the pool, even as the music played softly in the background, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that there was something waiting underneath it all. Daniel was different tonight. He wasn't just hosting, he was watching her, measuring every smile she gave, every laugh she shared. It was as if her reaction mattered more than anything else. When she caught his gaze, he squeezed her hand again, and she felt the tension rise in her chest. This wasn't just a pool party. It was something more than. Mark raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice steady but filled with meaning. The group cheered, lifting their glasses, but Samantha froze. New beginnings. The words wrapped around her, pulling her deeper into confusion. What new beginnings were they celebrating? Nobody had told her about any new chapter. She forced a smile, clinking her glass with theirs, but inside her questions grew louder. Why was everyone looking at her as if they were waiting for her to understand? Why was Daniel holding her hand so tightly, as if afraid she might slip away? And why did her heart suddenly feel like it was racing towards something unknown? The laughter continued. The water shimmered under the lights, and music floated gently in the air. But Samantha's mind was no longer in the moment. She felt the pull of mystery, the weight of a secret lingering just beyond her reach. The pool party had only begun, yet already she knew this night would not be ordinary. Something was coming, something she wasn't prepared for. And as she glanced once more at Daniel, whose eyes refused to leave hers, she realized she was about to uncover what had been hidden all along. The backyard glowed softly as the night settled in. The string lights Daniel had hung earlier shimmering above the pool like tiny stars. Music played low in the background, the kind of gentle rhythm that made conversation easy. Samantha stepped onto the patio, her glass cool in her hand, and looked around. The air was warm, carrying the smell of freshly cut grass and faint traces of barbecue. The pool reflected the light, rippling softly as if holding secrets beneath its surface. Mark was the first to greet her. He carried his usual charm, a man who could make anyone laugh with just a few words. He handed her a drink, his smile warm. "Sam, it's good to see you." His voice carried a weight, a kindness she hadn't expected. She thanked him and smiled, though her thoughts kept drifting to Daniel, who was moving around the backyard, checking everything as if he needed it to be perfect. Emily joined her soon after, her energy filling the space. She hugged Samantha tightly and whispered, "You look beautiful tonight." Emily's presence had always been calming, like sunshine breaking through clouds. She talked about her week, about little things, yet every so often her eyes flicked toward Daniel. As though she too was waiting for something, Chris arrived last, carrying his guitar in its worn black case. He was loud, cheerful, cracking jokes as he walked in. "Hope the neighbors don't mind a little music tonight," he said, his grin wide. Everyone laughed and the sound seemed to blend with the soft hum of the evening. Samantha tried to join in, laughing and talking, but she couldn't ignore the undercurrent. There was something unspoken passing between Daniel and his friends. They shared glances when they thought she wasn't looking, small nods, quick smiles. It was subtle, but Samantha had always been good at noticing things. Tonight, every little detail felt louder than usual. She sat by the edge of the pool, dipping her feet into the cool water. The others gathered nearby, chatting about old memories, trips they had taken together, and plans for the summer. Yet even in their laughter, Samantha sensed the weight of something unsaid. Daniel came to sit beside her, his hand resting gently over hers. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost careful. She nodded, but the truth was different. Her heart was restless, her thoughts circling around the idea that this wasn't just a party. "Everything looks perfect," she said, forcing a smile. Emily leaned in then, holding out her glass. "To Samantha and Daniel," she said, her eyes shining, "for everything they've been through and everything that's still ahead." The toast made Samantha pause. She hadn't expected to be the center of the evening. Her cheeks warmed and she raised her glass out of politeness. Daniel's hand tightened slightly on hers. His silence spoke louder than words, as though he was waiting for the right moment. Mark added quickly, "To new beginnings," his voice steady and full of meaning. He looked straight at Daniel as he said it, and Samantha's chest tightened. That phrase again, new beginnings. She didn't know whether to feel hopeful or afraid. The group clinked glasses, their laughter rising again, but Samantha's mind was miles away. She studied the way Daniel was watching her, the way his friends seemed to know something she didn't. Every smile felt like it carried a hidden message. She sipped her drink, but her throat felt dry. The night carried on. They ate together, shared stories, and the pool shimmered under the glow of the lights. Chris strummed his guitar softly, filling the silence between conversations with gentle chords. Samantha looked at the faces around her, people she trusted, people who had always been part of their lives. Yet tonight she felt like an outsider. Everyone seemed to know their role except her. Daniel leaned close and whispered, "I want you to just enjoy tonight. Don't worry about anything." His words were kind, but they only deepened her curiosity. Why would he say that unless there was something to worry about? As the evening deepened, the group grew quieter. The laughter softened, and the sound of the pool water lapping gently against the sides filled the silence. Samantha sat back, her heart beating faster, her mind tangled with questions. She couldn't deny it anymore. This night wasn't about a casual gathering. It was about her, about Daniel, and about something waiting just ahead. When Mark set his drink down and leaned forward, his expression more serious than before, Samantha felt her pulse quicken. He looked at her with a mixture of warmth and purpose. "Sam," he said carefully, "tonight isn't only about having fun. There's something important Daniel wants you to see." Her eyes darted to Daniel. He was already watching her, his gaze steady, his hand holding hers tightly. In that moment, she knew the truth. This party had been planned not for the sake of fun, but for her. For them, asterisk. Daniel leaned close and whispered, "I want you to just enjoy tonight. Don't worry about anything." His words were kind, but they only deepened her curiosity. Why would he say that unless there was something to worry about? As the evening deepened, the group grew quieter. The laughter softened, and the sound of the pool water lapping gently against the sides filled the silence. Samantha sat back, her heart beating faster, her mind tangled with questions. She couldn't deny it anymore. This night wasn't about a casual gathering. It was about her, about Daniel, and about something waiting just ahead. When Mark set his drink down and leaned forward, his expression more serious than before, Samantha felt her pulse quicken. He looked at her with a mixture of warmth and purpose. "Sam," he said carefully, "tonight isn't only about having fun. There's something important Daniel wants you to see." Her eyes darted to Daniel. He was already watching her, his gaze steady, his hand holding hers tightly. In that moment, she knew the truth. This party had been planned not for the sake of fun, but for her. For them, the glow of the lights, the careful decorations, the way everyone kept looking at her, it all made sense. But what she didn't know yet was whether this surprise would heal her heart or break it. The backyard was suddenly too quiet, too expectant. She felt the weight of all eyes on her, the tension pressing against her chest. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, and Samantha braced herself. Whatever was coming next would change the night Tan may be there. Marriage forever. The air around the pool grew still as Daniel stood, his hands still wrapped around Samantha's. The laughter from earlier faded, leaving only the soft sound of water shifting in the pool and the quiet strum of Chris's guitar. Samantha's heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. She could feel that something important was about to happen. Daniel looked at her with eyes that carried both fear and love. "Sam," he began, his voice low but steady, "I know this past year hasn't been easy. I know I've been distant, distracted, and maybe I made you feel like you weren't my priority. But tonight is about us, about reminding you what we mean to each other." Samantha's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but no words came. She had longed to hear something like this from him, and now that he was saying it, she didn't know how to respond. Daniel nodded at his friends. And suddenly, Emily and Mark moved toward the far side of the yard. They pulled away a large sheet that had been covering something. As the fabric dropped, Samantha gasped. In front of her stood a wide canvas board, lit by small spotlights covered with photographs. Dozens of them, maybe more. Every picture was of her and Daniel smiling at the beach, holding hands at Christmas, blowing out birthday candles, laughing in the kitchen at midnight. Her hand flew to her mouth. These were moments she thought had been forgotten, tucked away in drawers or buried in old phones. But here they were, displayed with care. She stepped closer, her fingers trembling as she traced the edges of one photograph where Daniel was kissing her cheek on their wedding day. You kept all of these," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel came up beside her, his voice gentle. "I kept everything, Sam. Every laugh, every tear, every memory. Even when I didn't show it, you were always in my heart. And I wanted you to see tonight that I haven't forgotten who we are." Her eyes filled with tears. The photographs weren't just pictures. They were reminders of the life they had built, of love that still lingered even in silence. She turned toward him, but before she could speak, Mark's voice cut through softly. "That's not all, Sam," he said carefully. He exchanged a glance with Daniel, and for a moment the tension thickened. "There's something else you need to know." Samantha's stomach twisted. She looked from Mark to Emily to Chris, then back at Daniel. Her husband's face was unreadable, but his hand reached for hers again, squeezing tightly. "Please," he said softly, "just listen." Mark stepped closer, his tone respectful but firm. Daniel didn't plan this alone. We've seen how much he struggled, how much he wanted to make things right. He came to us because he wanted to do something big, something meaningful for you. We helped him pull this together because we believe in both of you." Samantha blinked, surprised. "You all knew." Emily nodded, her smile soft but her eyes glistening. "We've seen how you've both been carrying so much. We wanted tonight to be a turning point, a chance for love to feel alive again." The words struck Samantha deeply. She had felt so alone in her doubts, convinced she was the only one noticing the distance between her and Daniel. But here were their closest friends, standing beside them, working together to bring light back into their marriage. Her emotions swirled relief, gratitude, confusion. She turned back to Daniel, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you just tell me?" Daniel's face softened. "Because I wanted you to feel it, not just hear it. I wanted you to see that I'm not giving up on us, that I'm willing to fight for you, for us, in every way I can." Samantha's tears spilled over, sliding down her cheeks. She looked at the photographs again, at the evidence of years of love captured in still frames. Memories of when everything felt effortless, when every day with him was filled with laughter and closeness. For so long she had wondered if that was gone forever. Now, standing here, she realized it was still there, hidden. Waiting to be remembered, Chris set his guitar down for a moment and spoke quietly. "Sometimes love needs reminders. Tonight is about giving you both that reminder." The words lingered in the air, gentle and true. Samantha's chest ached, but in a different way. Now a hopeful ache, a longing ache. She turned to Daniel, searching his face for the man she had fallen in love with years ago. And in that moment, she saw him again, not the distant man she had been living with, but the husband who once made her believe in forever. She wanted to speak, to tell him how much this meant, but her voice faltered. All she could manage was a whisper. "Daniel." He stepped closer, his hand lifting to brush away her tears. "I know I can't fix everything in one night, Sam, but I can promise you this: I'll never stop trying." Her breath caught, her heart swelling with emotions too big for words. But just as she thought the night couldn't hold any more surprises, Chris picked up his guitar again and began strumming softly. Daniel looked at her with a flicker of nervousness. "There's still one more thing," he said quietly. The friends around them exchanged small smiles, as though they had been waiting for this moment. Samantha's pulse quickened again. The photographs had already left her speechless. More could be waiting for her. The sound of the guitar filled the silence, each note wrapping around her heart like a memory coming alive. Daniel took her hand and led her toward the pool's edge, where the lights reflected in ripples of gold and silver. The night was far from over, and Samantha knew she was about to discover the final piece of the surprise Daniel had been holding close. Whatever it was, her life, her marriage, and her heart would never be quite the same after tonight. Asterisk. The pool lights shimmered brighter as Chris's guitar carried a soft melody through the night. The guests grew quiet, their laughter fading into a calm hush. Samantha stood by the edge of the pool, her dress brushing gently against her legs as the breeze moved across the yard. Daniel held her hand tightly, his thumb brushing over her skin as though he was afraid to let go. She had already seen the photographs, already felt the weight of his confession. But something in his eyes told her the night wasn't finished. Chris strummed a familiar tune, and it only took a few seconds for Samantha's breath to catch. It was the song they had danced to on their wedding night. The song that had played softly when they promised forever under a canopy of white lights years ago. Her chest tightened, her knees weak. She hadn't heard that melody in so long, and now here it was live, tender, and carrying every memory back to her. Daniel stepped closer, his voice unsteady at first, but strong enough to carry over the music. He began to sing the words to that song, the very same words that once made her believe love could last a lifetime. His voice cracked in places, but it was raw and honest. And that was what made it beautiful. Samantha's vision blurred with tears. She saw flashes in her mind, the two of them holding hands at the altar, laughing on their honeymoon, whispering dreams into the dark. So much had happened since then, and she had feared those moments were buried too deep to recover. Yet now, hearing Daniel sing with his heart in every note, she realized they had never disappeared. They had only been waiting to be found again. The friends around them clapped softly in rhythm, their smiles wide, their eyes shining. Emily wiped away her own tears, and Mark nodded along as if he had known all along how powerful this moment would be. When the song ended, the silence was heavy with emotion. Daniel's voice trembled as he spoke. "Sam, I don't have new promises to give you tonight. I don't have grand speeches or new rings. What I do have is the same vow I made years ago. I don't want a new beginning without you. I just want us to begin again together." With that, he knelt by the poolside, not with a jewelry box, but with his own wedding band resting in his palm. The same one he had worn since the day he slipped it on in front of their family and friends. His hand shook as he lifted it slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. Samantha's tears spilled freely, falling faster than she could wipe them away. She pressed her hands against her face, overwhelmed by the depth of the gesture. He wasn't offering her something new. He was offering her something they already had. Something they had built together and almost forgotten. Daniel. Her voice broke, but she didn't pull away. She sank to her knees in front of him, the cool stone of the patio pressing against her. Her hands covered his, her fingers brushing over the familiar band. "You don't need to prove anything. You just need to be here." "With me?" He nodded, his eyes wet with tears he no longer tried to hide. "I am here. And I'll keep being here no matter how many times we stumble." The applause from their friends broke the silence. Emily clapped with joy. Mark raised his glass again. And Chris let his guitar rest on his lap, his smile wide and unguarded. The whole backyard seemed to pulse with warmth, as though love itself had settled over them. Samantha leaned into Daniel, her forehead resting against his. The noise of the world faded the music. The laughter, the water, all of it fell away until there was only the two of them. For the first time in months, maybe longer, she felt whole again. The night carried on with laughter returning, lighter this time, brighter. They ate under the string lights, shared more stories, and let the music guide the evening. But for Samantha, everything had changed. Every sound, every smile, every shared glance felt deeper now, anchored by the truth of what had just happened. At one point, she stepped away from the group, standing quietly by the pool, her reflection rippling under the lights. Daniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. "Thank you for staying," he whispered against her ear. She turned in his arms, meeting his gaze. "Thank you for reminding me why I should." The pool shimmered, the friends laughed behind them, and the night carried a new rhythm, a rhythm of love rediscovered. Of a bond renewed not through grand gestures, but through honesty and effort. Samantha realized then that the real surprise wasn't the photographs, or the song, or even the beautiful setting Daniel had created. The real surprise was love itself, still alive, still strong, still worth fighting for as the night stretched on. She leaned against Daniel, feeling the beat of his heart under her cheek. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't worried about tomorrow. Tonight was enough. Tonight, she knew they still belonged to each other. The pool party that had begun as a mystery ended, catch us as a memory she would carry forever. Not because of the lights or the music, but because it reminded her that love, even when shaken, could rise again if both hearts were willing to keep holding on. Asterisk.